On to our next author, Camilla Gibb, won the 2006 Trillium Book Award for Sweetness in the Belly, published by Doubleday Canada. Please welcome Camilla Gibb.
Hi, I'm going to actually read to you from the non-Trillium Book Award-winning next novel, called The Beauty of Humanity Movement, the non-actually award-winning of any, description novel. It's still eminently worthy, of course, I must convince myself. It's a novel that's set in Vietnam. It's contemporary Vietnam in 2007. And I'm just going to introduce you to one of the main characters, a tour guide named Tu, who lives in Hanoi. Tu sits behind his father on the seat of the Honda Dream as they head back toward the old quarter after breakfast, wending their way through the congestion of motorbikes, bicycles, cyclos, pedestrians, cars, wooden carts, and backbent widows peddling food in baskets, hanging from bamboo poles. They blaze a trail through air thick with diesel fumes and morning fog. He squeezes his father's shoulder affectionately before hopping off the back of the bike in front of the Metropole, Hanoi's finest hotel, once the finest in all of Indochina. He skips up the steps and he enters the lobby. The giant potted palms, chandeliers, and ceiling fans keep the grand colonial air of the place alive. Phuong, Tu's best friend and partner in capitalist adventure, stumbles in just after him, looking foul-tempered with the stink of late-night karaoke. He's neglected to shave, and his lips appear glued together. Phuong has clearly not been fortified with the bowl of pho that is vital for one's daily performance. Phuong is the driver, and Tu, because of his better English, is the guide. But together they are the A-team, employed by the New Dawn tour agency, and their matching company T-shirts and their knockoff Chinese Nike Shox Jungas with soles the color of ripe mango. On the job, Phuong goes by the name Hanoi Poison, Hanoi P for short. He says it's for the benefit of the tourists who can only seem to spit his real name. But the truth is, it's his rap name, and he's planning on becoming a famous rap artist. Phuong has solid musical training behind him, a growing reputation, and many, many fans, but most of all, he's got talent. He tries to mess with Tu's name as well. Too dangerous, tattoo. But Tu's not interested. I'm old-fashioned that way, he says. Just leave it be. Tu met Phuong a couple of years ago when they were both teachers at the high school in Dong Da district. Tu was 20 years old and had just made the depressing discovery that loving math was a very different thing from loving teaching it. He was dreading the thought of the next 45 years until retirement. But when he thought of the drudgery his parents had endured in their early working lives, he was overcome with guilt. Bin and Anne, his mother and father, had been employed at the Russian KAO factory for years, dutiful proletariat manufacturing ping-pong balls for a pittance. Tu's father had worked with celluloid, his mother had tested for bounce, and Tu had a cardboard box full of misshapen white balls to play with as a child. But in the 1980s, the bones of the Soviet Union began to rattle. Soviet aid ran out and the factories began to close, leaving Vietnam friendly and hungry and in trouble. And so began Doi Moi, Vietnam's very own perestroika, the economic reforms that allowed a free market to develop and has since changed all their lives. Tu's father now has endless carpentry work. He employs 2 assistants, 4 skilled woodworkers, and an apprentice, but still, with so much construction going on, he must say no to jobs on occasion. Despite his enthusiasm for private enterprise, Bin is still more craftsman than businessman. His mother, meanwhile, had knocked on the doors of every one of the new butcher shops that opened in the 1990s, until she found one proprietor who was obliged to listen because he came from the same village as her mother. The story is now legendary in their family. If you can tell me 9 ways to prepare pork for Tet, I'll consider hiring you, the butcher said. And so Tu's mother recalled the pork dishes they used to eat during the holidays at her grandmother's house. She described the sensation of her teeth collapsing through fried rice paper into the soft ground pork middle of a spring roll, the crisp saltiness of pigskin fried with onions, the silk of the finest pork and cinnamon pate coating her tongue, the soft chew of pork sausages, the buttery collapse of pig's trotters served with bamboo shoots, the ticklish texture of pig intestines resting on vermicelli, and the fill of sticky rice, pork, and green beans boiled in banana leaves. And just when she was about to falter, she remembered how her father used to reminisce about the dishes his mother made for Tet during his boyhood in Hue: pork bologna, fermented pork hash, pig's brain pie. The butcher raised his finger. "You're hired. Stop there before I fire you." Tu didn't have to do time in a factory. He grew up in a world where he was free to choose a career for himself. What right did he have to complain about his teaching job? But then he'd met Phuong, a part-time music teacher a few years older than he, who taught classical music 2 days a week. Phuong, moping in the teacher's lounge, had called theirs a thankless profession, and this had unleashed a sympathetic torrent from Tu and marked the beginning of an illustrious friendship. Phuong had the spirit and imagination of an artist and an entrepreneur, enough to inflate the dreams for Tu. And by the end of that school year, once Phuong had lobbied Tu's father for consent, they had both submitted their resignations and registered for a diploma course at Hanoi Tourism College. You are the doi moi generation, the instructors at the college told them, the children of the renovation, the future of Vietnam, a future that depends on opening even more doors to international trade and relations. Tu feels the elation of being poised at the vanguard of the future as a proud, fully fledged, nationally accredited tour guide shaking the hands of the world. Tu's English might be better than Phuong's, but Tu knows that in many ways it's Phuong who teaches him what foreigners really want. Tu prides himself on being an excellent memorizer, and initially he relied on the vast and readily accessible number of facts stored in his brain. He has memorized in particular the Big Book of Inventions, so if a tourist comes from, say, Norway, he can impress him by asking, "Do you know the invention for which Norway is most famous?" The aerosol spray can. And the tourist will turn his blue eyes to his companion and say, "Really, I had no idea." In 1926, by Mr. Eric Rothheim, chemical engineer, Tu might add. He also attempts to wow with statistics. A communist education can encourage such things. The land area of each administrative division in the country, for instance, the number of university graduates from various faculties, the lengths of the Mekong and the Red Rivers and the Great Wall of China. Really. It was Phuong who pulled him aside one day and said, "You know when they say really, it actually means that is very boring." "Really?" Tu asked. "Really." Tu believes it's shared wisdom like this that has made them the A-team. But he's still learning, and perhaps that's what he likes best about his job. No pain, no gain, as the Americans say. This morning, he and Phuong are escorting a middle-aged Canadian couple to some nearby villages. Tu likes the Canadians, even if their most exciting invention was the garbage bag. Really, in 1950, by Mr. Harry Waslick of Winnipeg, Manitoba. They're generally kind, the Canadians, though it always amuses him how they introduce themselves with variations of, "Oh, it's nice to meet you, we're from Canada. See the maple leaf sewn onto our knapsacks? Our country might be right next door, but it's a world apart from its southern neighbor. In fact, we offered refuge to a great many great draft dodgers who didn't believe the Americans should be in Vietnam. Horrible, horrible war. Horrible, horrible US. It's just horrible, George Bush. And Iraq, now don't get me started on Iraq." Tu will nod and smile because he doesn't want to speak a truth they will find complicated or disagreeable. And this is what is meant by saving face. The war was a long time ago, well before Tu was born, and besides, in his opinion, an opinion shared with most of his friends, everything great was invented in the US. Blue jeans, for example, and Nikes and Tommy Hilfiger, and MTV and Nintendo and the internet. And furthermore, the Vietnamese beat the Americans. They don't go around boasting about it, but it's true. It wasn't like the Chinese crushing the Vietnamese for 1,000 years, or the French who tortured and killed for decades, making the Vietnamese slaves in their own country, taking every decision out of their hands. While such thoughts might fly around like a ping-pong ball inside Tu's head, none of his clients would ever suspect it. Tu works hard to impress them with his good nature and exemplary customer service, and he's ever ready with his new dawn smile. Today's Canadians are from Quebec, the first French Canadians Tu has ever met. "Oh, we too were colonized by the French. I'm sure you're aware of that," he said when he met them in the lobby yesterday, attempting to establish some common bond. Their reaction had caused Tu to spend most of last night in an internet cafe, and today he hopes to redeem himself with sensitive insights into their unique history and culture. He will need to, because Phuong, green with hangover, doesn't look like he's going to be of any particular help. Tu is indebted to his friend for changing his life, and he considers Phuong a brother. He envies him like a brother too. Phuong is taller and leaner, but it's not Tu's fault he inherited his father's slightly bowed legs. The baggy jeans fortunately help disguise this. And at least both his eyes are real. There's no danger of inheriting his father's glass eye. Tu doesn't have nearly as white a smile as Phuong's, his upper teeth having been stained from taking antibiotics when he was a kid, but again, not his fault. And his hands, a little small, but surely more than made up for by the size and enthusiasm of his penis, as his future wife will soon discover. Maybe I'll end on that note. Thank you.